Today on Obscure Old Racing Games, I want to take a look at a game that doesn't quite fit the mold of a traditional racer. It also may not be quite as obscure as the other games I've featured here so far. Look at that! Only 3 episodes in and we're already stretching the premise of this series. There's a good reason for that, though. I finally got myself an HDCP stripper, which means I can now record PS3 games, starting with the topic of today's video, Toy Home. This is a Sony-published PS3 exclusive that I actually hadn't heard of until somewhat recently, and if the length of this game's Wikipedia page is any indication, there's a good chance you haven't heard of it either. Toy Home was made by Tokyo-based developer Game Republic, and published under the Japan Studio branch of Sony Interactive. Game Republic is probably best known for the somewhat infamous PS3 launch title, Genji in the Days of the Blade. Oh, come on, you know, the game responsible for this moment at E3 2006?
The stages of the game will also be based on famous battles which actually took place in ancient Japan. So here's this giant enemy crab.
Getting back on topic, Toy Home was the only racer Game Republic ever developed before their closure in 2011. Despite being a first-party title on a major console, this game has remained relatively unheard of due to the circumstances surrounding its release. This game came out in 2007, a little more than a year after the PS3's initial launch. At this point, the PS3 was still an expensive piece of kit, with a relatively small install base, and not much in the way of killer apps. On top of that, this game was among the first wave of download-only titles Sony released on PSN. Buying games digitally was a brand new concept in console gaming at the time, so most people probably would have been hesitant to drop money on this first wave of PSN titles, even if they did own a PS3. It's now been over 13 years since Toy Home came out, so let's see if it's any good, or if it deserved to be forgotten. First impressions upon starting the game are encouraging. We're greeted by this cute little toy car being thrown around in a black void, which leads into the title screen. There's not much in the way of settings, so let's jump straight into a single-player game. We first get to pick between one of 2 toy cars. The Hot Rod is a bit faster and more difficult to control than the Compact, so it basically amounts to a difficulty selection. After that, we're dropped into the first level of the game. There's no in-game instructions or even a level select to get an idea of what you're getting into here, so if you didn't go out of your way to read the in-game manual on the menu, you might be a bit lost at first. Thankfully, this game isn't too hard to figure out, it's just a bit jarring being dropped into a level like this without a clear indication of what to do. Gameplay-wise, Toy Home is what you might get if you crossed a standard kart racer with Katamari Damacy. You control a toy car in a small open level cluttered with other toys and household objects. The goal is to hit a series of checkpoints as quickly as possible for a high score, while gathering collectibles and pulling off tricks along the way to boost your score. Unlike a conventional racing game, though, there's no fixed order you have to hit the checkpoints in. Most levels do have a loosely defined track that will lead you through all of them, but it's really more of a suggestion. The best collectibles are frequently placed in spots where, if you're following the pre-made track, you have to miss a checkpoint and double back in order to get them. There is a mini-map, but it only shows your position relative to the checkpoints and collectibles you haven't gotten yet. Your score is based on the number of pickups you grab and the amount of time you have left on the clock, so internalizing the level layouts and finding your own best route is essential for high-score runs. To that end, the handling model on the cars is extremely responsive, with good grip and a pretty tight turning radius. I actually think I prefer the muscle car in this regard. The faster acceleration more than makes up for the decreased handling in most situations, and it's just more fun to control. There's also a number of moves to help navigate around obstacles, like a power slide, a boost, and a small jump. Also, did I mention that this game uses Havok physics? Because the designers sure want you to know. In addition to the giant Havok logo that's displayed when you first start the game, nearly everything in these environments is a physics object that can be driven through and knocked around. Toy Home is something of a tech demo for the PS3, and it shows. While random stacks of blocks can sometimes mess with the visibility, I can't deny that plowing through them is extremely satisfying. Toy Home just has really good game feel in general, actually. This game runs at 60 FPS with buttery smooth animations. I only saw the frame rate dip a couple of times when things got really busy. The The sound design is also fantastic. Nearly everything you interact with feels like a plasticky wooden toy, while also maintaining a good sense of presence and weight. I particularly like the backfire effect on the muscle car. It somehow sounds both like a real car, and like a tiny bit of plastic snapping in two at the same time. The feedback you get for grabbing collectibles and hitting checkpoints is also an audio-visual treat. Just about the only problem with the presentation is these level end screens. Most of the text looks kind of bland next to the exaggerated toy box aesthetic the rest of the interface has going, and they also play this shrill, borderline ear-rapey sound effect while tallying up your score. There's not really a whole lot more to say about Toy Home in terms of presentation or game design. The simple gameplay loop fits the tried-and-true, easy-to-learn, difficult-to-master arcade formula, the premise is unique, and it holds up extremely well in terms of both visuals and performance, especially for a PS3 game. This would be an easy recommendation for fans of kart racers, arcade games, and for speedrunners, if it weren't for one massive, overriding issue that's like a cruise ship anchor dragging down this fishing boat of an experience. I mentioned earlier how Toy Home is just as much a tech demo as it is a game, and that philosophy extends to the controls as well. This game goes out of its way to showcase every new feature of the PS3's controller, which means generous use of the DualShock 3's squishy trigger buttons and 6-axis tilt controls. The triggers are bound to the car's gas and brake, and the tilt controls are used for steering. This control scheme can't be changed. If it looks like I'm struggling in any of the footage you've seen up until now, it's because I am. These controls are awful, and I felt like I was constantly fighting against them. The steering feels floaty and unresponsive, even compared to tilt steering in other games like Mario Kart Wii. It's particularly bad in sections where you have to navigate onto narrow ramps, and I definitely timed out of a few levels due to this. At one point, the tilt sensor just stopped responding altogether, and my car got stuck doing donuts until the level timed out. What makes this the absolute worst, though, is that a more traditional and far superior control scheme could have easily been implemented on the exact same input device. At least the Wii Remote can justify tilt steering by its lack of analog sticks, and Mario Kart Wii still lets you play with a GameCube controller if you have one. Having an analog controller in your hand, but not being able to use it in a way consistent with the muscle memory built up by other driving games, just adds to the annoyance and frustration of these controls. I could live with the awful triggers being bound to gas and brake, but the tilt steering is so aggravating that I don't even want to go back to get more footage for this video. Toy Home is a case study in how pointless hardware gimmicks can absolutely ruin an otherwise great game. I'm not against novel or unconventional controller schemes, but they need to fit a game's design and be at least as good, if not better, than the status quo they're aiming to replace. That simply isn't the case here. It's a real shame, because aside from the controls, I think Toy Home has aged much better than a lot of other PS3 titles, and it could easily stand as a cult classic if it weren't needlessly tied to a controller gimmick no one asked for. I think that's just about all I have to say on this one. Apologies for the short video this time, but there just isn't a whole lot to this game, and the control issues kept me from playing it as much as I would have liked. Alright, so I need to add an addendum to this video real quick. So, recently there have been rumors that Sony is going to be shutting down the PlayStation Store for the PS3 and PSP, and while I don't think that's happened yet, literally as I was working on this video, the old PlayStation Store website that had all the downloadable PS3 games and whatnot on it went down. So if you want to buy Toy Home, you can no longer do it through the website, you have to do it on the console, I'm pretty sure. And you might not even be able to do that by the time this video goes up, so if you want to grab Toy Home or any other PSN exclusive title like it, do that now, because this video just became surprisingly topical. In the meantime, leave this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and maybe check out some of the other videos in the end card if you haven't seen them already. I think that about wraps it up. Bye!